We've examined containers and we've examined rows. The next element to examine in our grid setup is looking at the columns. Now the columns enable us to have a grid structure because they enable us to have different sized columns across our screen. So let's examine exactly how we add those. So once again, I've got the template page open. Let's remove the H1 tag and add the container and the row. So now we've added the container and the row, we're now ready to add the column. It's pretty similar to what we've done before. Once again, we add a div. We give this div a specific class, and as you might guess, it starts with col for column. But it doesn't end there. We then have to state the size of the column, and we'll look at these in more detail in a later tutorial. So here I'm saying large. Once it's in place, I then need to say how many columns this intends to span. So the column setup inside Bootstrap is 12 columns. So that's the total amount of columns that we have to add our columns up to. So if I add 6 inside here, we can see immediately that's going to take half of that amount of columns. So if I was to do 2 columns that had 6, that would span the full 12 columns. As previously, let's add a well. I'm going to copy that column and paste it below. Notice that I've pasted it inside the row, so it will all remain on one row. I've just changed the name of the second column to column 2. Okay, let's take a look at that inside our browser. And as you can see, there we have 2 columns. Let's look at how we can change this for other sizes. Back in our code editor, if I was to change this to 4, I would need to change this to 8 in order for it to make up our full column width. And as you can see, we have a much smaller column for column 1 and a larger column for column 2. And in this way, we can build up much more complex layouts. Back to the code editor, I'm going to change this back to a 4. And there's no reason why I couldn't add in 2 more and make this a 2 and another 2. And then make this column 3 and column 4. So we've got 4, 8, 10, 12. And as you can see, 2 slightly larger columns and 2 smaller columns over here. So the power of this is that very quickly we can build up some quite complex column structures within our design without really having to do an awful lot. And this is probably one of the things that takes the longest to do when you start from scratch. But Bootstrap has all of this built in, and so taking advantage of this enables development time of your website to be much smaller.